Welcome to the Nuna's Nunchi podcast. I am so excited to have Angela Killoren, who I had the privilege of meeting, I would say a few times last year, which was super awesome. She is the co-CEO of CJENM USA or America, and you guys are probably quite familiar with CJENM, and we'll talk more about what she does. So welcome, Angela. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Jeannie, it's good to see you here. And jump into all the things you love. I know that you love Korean drama even more than I do, and I'm so appreciative of that.
I don't know. I mean, I think there are a lot of lovers out there. So when I think I'm like the ultimate fan person, no, then I meet other people, which we'll talk about that school me in K-dramas. Yeah. Well, Angela, so yes, I met you a few times last year, and the more I hear about what you've accomplished, and this is not to embarrass you, but I'm going to bring it out because I look up to you. I think it's great. I would love to talk about your work. So let's start there. I just introduced you as the co-CEO of CJENM America. That's a big deal. So tell us a little bit what it looks like to be Angela Killoren, a day in the life, just briefly. What's your work look like?
There really is no typical day. And I think for us, it's really about connecting all that we do, with Korean content. So Korean film, television, K-pop, all of that with our audiences and fans in the United States. And those include like business to business meetings, trying to create more opportunities for Korean creators here in the US, vice versa. And then of course to the services of how they're going. And it can be as varied as arranging for, like screenings of our films to like, figuring out the campaign for what we're going to do here for, an upcoming film or our event, KCON. So I don't know, there's no regular day. The whole thing is just one giant strategy about how to make Korean entertainment more accessible in the United States, but more and more vice versa, kind of make Korean entertainment more an integral part of Hollywood entertainment as well. And just every day is kind of taking that down a little by little.
Yeah, so I love that. And so when you say yes, every day is like a strategy, what's the most exciting part of your job? And I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, okay, all this beautiful K content that we see, that we love watching, I myself, and I use them for mental health purposes and my self-care. So they're a big deal. But I'd love to hear about what is the joy in life in the work that you do? What's, I guess, in some sense, why do you love your work or why do you enjoy your work?
I think it's a lot of, and, this goes back to Netflix obviously made our job much, much easier. So props to Netflix. You can almost, in terms of Korean contents, especially on the drama side, presence on the world stage, you can kind of go before Netflix and after Netflix. K-pop similar, before YouTube, after YouTube. Yeah. And both of them, the two of those, YouTube and Netflix, share the same quality, that they carried a lot of Korean content and weren't hiding it or telling people like, this is what you should watch or shouldn't watch, or not even should. This is what you can watch or can't watch, right? Before that, the way that you got music, you had to have like a publishing deal in the US, and only if a US radio station carried it or whatever would you even have access to it. Yeah. Otherwise, there was that whole underground market of like the illegal mixtapes or like, yes. Same with the dramas, right? Like you had all those video, the video bang, right? Where you got the VHS videotapes that had the copies, and that was the only way to get those dramas here because nobody else was officially licensing them for the US. So when those kind of global platforms just turned it on and people could just find what they liked, that was the hugest opportunity. So, I think what we've done from, as a quantum of comparison, like what they did was huge. What we did is probably much more targeted, but to also constantly put it into the news, do events around it. We're out there every single day talking to people in the industry, like meeting people on the industry and getting people excited about it, telling them, just because it's big on Netflix, people don't necessarily know. that it's important and how many people are watching and who the demographic is and kind of normalizing it. So I don't know, we do a lot of that. And I think that I've always been, I feel like, you know, even before CJ, my job was at USC, it was always some sort of, and growing up in Korea and then having gone to school in US and then going back to Korea and back and forth, my job, my life always had some element of introducing one side to the other and kind of normalizing and creating more understanding. And honestly, music and television dramas and film has the greatest ability to do that. So it's actually the most fun.
That's super cool. And going back a little bit, because you talked a little bit about your identity. How has the work you do in K content or elevating K content to basically the world, I guess, directly impacted your own identity? You grew up in Korea. Let's talk a little bit about your upbringing and what that's been like.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Korea. And then I'm even like half, my mom's Korean, my dad's American. They met in Korea. They got married in the US where I was born, then they went back to Korea. So even their relationship is this like ping pong back and forth. I think growing up in Korea was I think I probably started to embrace my Korean identity more later on, because when I was little, every Korean didn't treat me as Korean. They're like, always, I mean, even now, people are very surprised when I speak Korean because they don't
fluent Korean. Just gotta say, guys, okay, fluent.
But you know, and I was lucky to have all of that and to grow up with all of the culture and my grandmother and, you know, going to Korean school for a number of those years. But really, even though I was really, really in it, felt a little bit outside of it because every single Korean thought I was outside of it. But also at the same time, and I'm a huge student of history, like it was one of the most legitimately exciting places on the planet to grow up, right? Like I was in Korea from 1973 to I like volunteered at the Olympics in 1988. Like I was in this country where, like, even though by the time I hit 30, I felt like a 60 or a 70-year-old because I'd seen more changes in a single country than an equivalent person in the US would have in their entire lifetime, right? Like going to places with, honestly, like even just a little bit outside of Seoul, like outhouses, black and white television, some of the big highways like to Gangwon-do were not paved when I was little. Like I still remember going to Gangwon and it was like, oh, they're going to build a highway here because the East Coast is going to be a thing, right? To go from that, and now it's legitimately one of the most, kind of advanced, exciting places on earth to be. That was a huge, I had a lot of pride about that because also with my dad, he had come to Korea right after the Korean War. So he had always told me stories. And my mom had always told me stories about how her own home was bombed in the neighborhood in Seoul, because it was like kind of, it became, their home became like for a little bit the headquarters for the North Koreans when they moved in and they had stayed in Seoul. And so the North Koreans took over and then they had the flag planted. So when the Americans went through, they bombed their house.
Oh my gosh.
And like her father and her brother had fled to Busan, but her mother, she and her younger sister had stayed in Seoul. So just these stories that are incredible of people and you love, and yet the world around you was so different. I think it was just a huge appreciation of that. And and it's mixed in with identity and history and culture, which is so unique because the language was so difficult for anybody else outside of Korea to speak, that it felt so inaccessible that you, as a person who had the gift of being having both, like you really felt this need to try to literally translate constantly for people.
So you lived through so I heard the history part and feeling like it, just in some sense, even when you were 30, you felt like you had lived through so many decades of history. So all the things that we see through our beloved K-dramas, right? They're portraying different parts of history. People are so obsessed with the historical dramas and watching all that. You lived through that. What was the most, I guess, in some sense, the time that you remember that stuck with you, whether it was good or bad? Do you recall a certain period in Korea that you're like, wow, I'm never going to forget this?
I don't know, there's a couple of those instances, like in things like when I was in fifth grade, it'd be yeah, I think I was in I went to Korean school, and there was, one of my friends, not a close friend, just a girl who was in the class, and she was, great and all of that. And, I always remember she had pigtails, but then these super long braids, like the two very, very long braids. And I went to a nice elementary school in Seoul. And there was I think you remember the Korean president, Park Chung-hee, was assassinated.
Yes. Do you remember?
And there was martial law, but we went to school, and when we went back to school, she was not there anymore. And it was because her father was one of the people who was with Park Chung-hee, and so these weird things, right? Like you feel like you're there, but you're really there. And I grew up living on Yonsei University campus.
Oh, yeah.
So all the student demonstrations and the
I was going to ask you that. That's oh my goodness. Yeah, you saw all of that.
I had I had two, like, I loved my, like my Maltese dogs. They're like small, white and fluffy. And my dad had all I wanted was a Maltese. And one time when he came back from the US, he was just like, okay, we're getting you a dog, right?
Oh, okay, good.
And but my mom and my grandmother were so Korean, they didn't allow the dog in the house, right? At that time, now everybody has their dog.
Now everybody has dogs.
At that time, it's like dogs are for outdoors. So these like little fluffy white dogs would always be outdoors, except when there was a demonstration and it's just tear gas. So you'd like bring the dog inside, and like that was actually like my happy place, because then I got to have my dogs.
Oh my gosh. But so, I don't know why when you told me about your fellow student friend, I got chills, because that's kind of,
weird.
So you kind of, yeah, wow. Okay. So then now going back to more fun stuff, when you're watching the globalization of K content, for instance, on Netflix, what was the first successful show on there that you got on there that you're like, CJE&M was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Look how well it's being received. Like, what year was that, and what K-drama or K-dramas or K-films?
So we didn't know for a very long time how successful our stuff was or was not, right? Until, we kind of knew when people talked about it. I think the CEO of Netflix, Reed Hastings, the first time he mentioned a K-drama by name was when he talked about Sweet Home. And that was because they had commissioned it from, and it was studiodragon. CJE&M Studio was the one that made it and put it on the service. But actually, we in 2012 approached Netflix here and was like, you guys are buying, you're starting to do streaming, you're doing more and more foreign content. Why don't we, sell you a package of it was like library content, and then so it was like half films, half movies. Half films, half dramas. Exactly. So of, I think it was 20 of each, 20 dramas and 20 movies at the time. And honestly, at that time, Korean film was much better known than.
Wait, what year is this now around?
This is 2012.
2012. Okay.
Yeah. 2012 was kind of like so many different things happened in 2011, 2012. Part of it was like I got to start working at CJE&M in the US at that time, because that was exactly the time when CJ's various businesses in the US became more, there was more of a need to talk to a consumer. And so I got hired to do marketing. Before that, it was all about, business to business conversation. But in, late 2010, we opened the movie theater, the first Korean, CGV movie theater in the US. In late 2010, we'd also taken over a small cable network that we rebranded as Mnet America.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And that was, for K-pop, and, had that. It was before that, I think it was like Imagination. Okay. And then we also, because now we had a movie theater, we started to directly distribute movies. So not only into this one theater, but we were like booking theaters around the country so that we could show movies. And then because we were distributing movies, we're like, okay, where else could we sell movies? We should sell our movies to Netflix because nobody else wants, you know. So that was this whole thing like kind of snowballed this need. Once we were actually here doing the business, we needed to grow the business. And so suddenly you're just trying to do everything that you possibly can. So, you know, you start there. And I think even at the time that we did that, we knew that we couldn't just, you know, because Netflix already had like thousands and thousands of content, right? And unless you were actually seeing it, there was no way to see it. So I remember with a very small budget, we did this whole campaign around, you know, I learned a lot about APIs and deep links and like how to grab, like, you know, we took the shows and the movies that we thought would be most interesting to people. You know, Netflix gave you the codes for the APIs, and then we put ads on those, like social and whatever, everywhere.
Oh, wow.
To announce to people, because Netflix wasn't going to do it for us, announce to people, hey, Korean, you know, film now streaming, you know, Korean television drama now streaming on Netflix. And that's so that if you clicked it, you would just go right into that show, and then hopefully start to raise awareness about that. So it's a combination of opening the channel and then letting people know that the door is open, like, please go in because there's great stuff inside.
That was 2012. That was a while ago then. So what were some of those dramas in your initial bundle package and films? Let's start with the dramas, if you remember.
That's a good question. I don't remember.
I know, 2012. As you were talking, I was like 2012. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I did a little like web search right now, maybe I'd be like,
no, it's okay. It's because that's so long ago. Well, then will you remember maybe the first couple or one or two K-dramas that literally blew up that you're like, this is it. This is catching fire. Here we go. Do you know what I mean? Like, we made it kind of thing. We did our job.
The part that we could really prove that really started when, I mean, we kind of knew, right? Like, you know, people like you or people, we would have conversations with people that you didn't expect, be like, oh, we love Korean dramas, or I'm watching Korean dramas. I'm obsessed with Korean dramas, right? Like people in the Midwest, people who are, you know, just people you didn't consider your demo. And I thought I knew a lot about our demo because of KCON, right? KCON is this great KCON also started in 2012, right? It was a big year.
It did. Okay, wow.
Yeah, and so it was, and one of the reasons for doing that was so that we could actually figure out who our audience was, and, you know, talk to them, see them, and be able to start to think about how to better, you know, serve them, and then create more of them, really. And so KCON was a little bit of that. Like, you could see a lot of young women, K-pop, but then you saw like some older women. Like,
and now it's a lot of them.
And then like, oh, and then they were really, really obsessed with all the dramas. I mean, the dramas across the board, but there's slightly different audiences for that. Honestly, the one where you really started to see it was, and this is pretty recent, I think, Crash Landing on You.
How did I know you were going to say that? Crash Landing, which is very recent. If you think about it, like 2020.
I think it started in
2019,
late 2019. But like, it would have hit people's consciousness
like before the pandemic. It basically was airing before the pandemic, if I remember. And
probably it benefited from the pandemic,
right? That's what I mean. That's a lot of people's global gateway, like they'd say, their drama, because
then you could, before that, you had huge Korean dramas like My Love from Another Star.
Yes.
Right. That was also huge. What's the, oh my God, Guardian.
Goblin.
Goblin.
Totally.
Right.
I saw, so I have to bring this in. Of course, CJ&M was working with Netflix, but I have to admit, I was watching them on, there's another streaming site.
Vicky?
No, before
Fever.
Vicky, Drama Fever. Yes.
Right. Yeah. No, and we were doing the deals with Drama Fever too, because Drama Fever was way more.
Okay. Because that's where I saw some of like the Goblin and My Love from a Star and stuff. Yeah.
Right. And I think that was actually, you know, if it weren't for Drama Fever, so Netflix started to buy, but they didn't become huge fires. And then for a little while, you had Vicky and Drama Fever deciding that they were going to become the biggest server of Korean dramas. And so there was a bit of a competition.
Sure.
And so it was like, okay, you know, and then you'd have the big shows that you knew were coming up, and like who's going to take which one, and you have to, you know, kind of deal between the two of them. And oh, and then it's like, okay, then they don't want to do one by one, they want to do it as a package deal because they want to lock it in, and all those things, which later on is what has happened with Netflix as well. But at that point, yeah, Netflix was not the go-to. It was really, it was Vicky and Drama Fever.
Right. Okay. Wow. So then how do they approach you now? I'm not trying to get too businessy, but you're talking now, we have so many streaming sites. Even I'm like, oh my gosh, wait a second. It's on Hulu, you know, Hulu and Disney Plus, and I don't even want to Netflix, and I can't even Amazon Prime. How does it work now? Are you basically being approached by all these streaming sites now?
Yes, because Korean drama is now part of has to be part of your Asia strategy. So if you're going to be a global streamer and you're growing in Asia, especially, you know, like, I mean, it's popular here, but it's the most consumed content in Southeast Asia, right? So, you know, not just, and like for Netflix in Japan, their Korean dramas make up more than half of their top 10 list on an annual basis. You know, like it's a huge part of any service that goes into Asia. And then the rest of us benefit from that because we can watch it here.
Right. So you said Southeast Asia, but then how about East Asia and everything? I mean, is it pretty much dominating?
Well, yeah, no. I mean, Korean dramas have been huge for a long, long time. And, you know, I consider East Asia, basically it's like what, Korea, Japan, China, and Taiwan, right? Like very few countries, huge, but few countries. So China,
how about the Singapores and the Malaysia? Because I know tons of people in Indonesia. So many people love
right. Those are Southeast Asia.
Oh, Southeast Asia, right? Okay.
Southeast Asia, like what I consider the ASEAN countries, the ASEAN, the political, the regional group.
Yes.
And South Asia, you've got, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, then I'm thinking of, you know, the
Malaysia.
Indian subpeninsula, right?
Yeah.
And
there's huge fans there, just because I know from my platform. They're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, wow, everybody's
and huge. And then, you know, I mean, Latin America has a really great fan base. I think the MENA, Middle East, North Africa countries are really strong. It's incredible.
And don't forget India. I mean, that's huge. I don't know how many times I talk to India folks in India like every day.
Right.
You know, I'm going, no, I'm not seeing that one because I don't have time to see all of them. But thanks for letting me know. So that said, how much do you consume? I mean, are you expected? I don't know. Is it one of the job roles that you have to watch or at least catch all of them or at least know all of them that's out there? Because that's a lot of content. I'm just curious. Is your job?
I really wish I could. I really wish I could. I mean, I should probably know more than I do, and I'm kind of like the sports highlights person, I think. Like
but you know a little bit of each, I'm assuming. But then okay, so I have to ask you this because of course we're going to talk about our favorite K-dramas. Do you have a favorite K-drama?